welcome to Open Source episode 21. And I'm delighted for this episode to have a brand new guest. His name is Dimitar Kyosev. Say hi, Dimitar.
Hello. Hi, guys.
And we have returning, as always, Rory. Say hi, Rory. And Mark. Say hi, Mark.
Hey there. Rory looks a real crooner this week, doesn't he? He's just
like Men in
about
Black.
to launch into a swing song.
We've got a higher profile, guys, so we've got to raise.
Put a shirt on.
Excellent. So, Dimitar, welcome to our community and to this open source episode. Could you tell us, why did you decide to join our community, and also tell us about the startup that you're running?
Well, I decided because I was invited by you, by the way. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's really brilliant community. I think it's really full of very interesting, inspiring, and most of all, imaginary people. I personally find it very difficult to find imaginary people around, and being able to join with the two legs into a community like that is wow. So pretty much about me, I'm a founder of a small startup that is trying to change the world, or most particularly the world of credit default swap insurance. And what we are doing is creating a new collateral class, specially designed for credit default swaps, to navigate through the legal circumstances currently those instruments are facing. So.
Great. And you're also a participant at the R3 InsurTech Challenge, so best of luck with that. So
yes, thank you.
Since you're talking at the moment, could you tell us what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
Well, I found quite interesting the news that JP Morgan moved 200 billion of assets from London to Frankfurt. So this is interesting on two fronts, because there's first various different ways to move assets from one place to the other. And let's say it's a gold bar. So you can pretty much take the gold bar and move it physically from one place to the other, which is rather expensive, and you need to pay for extra security. So pretty much, probably this is not the way they did it. The way they did it is simply moving the title. So now the title is owned by JP Morgan Frankfurt, not JP Morgan London. And this is interesting in the context of the European Union negotiations and how acrimonious they can get, because if they get very bad, this is a wonderful opportunity for our side. I'm European, so hey, European Union. So it's a wonderful opportunity for our side to put a very painful leverage on top of Boris Johnson government, because they can really kind of screw the boats into the collateral part and demand moving physically this gold bar from London to Frankfurt. So that's my story.
And it's interesting also how there's been a lot of pressure also from British companies who are going to be suffering because of Brexit. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Mark, could you tell us what is it in the news that you found interesting this week?
Yes, I will. And the only other point, though, I was thinking, Dimitar, is I wonder if they moved any of the JP Morgan coin across. As they did that. That's another one.
We'll see.
So mine builds on our conversation last week about art and artists, but it's about a new blockchain streaming platform called ROCKI. So that's ROCKI that is launching. It's a beta at the moment, but it's a music streaming platform, and it's all about independent artists and fans. And the idea is the artists are compensated for their streams in both fiat currency and in what they call the ROCKS token. And again, it's another example of lots of intermediaries. So even since the really early days of music recording, musicians have really struggled to get kind of their share of the revenue. And in fact, there was a recent study on the music industry and revenue shared by Citigroup, and only 12% of revenue generated ends up in the hands of the artist that created the music. So it's a real struggle. Now, previously, they made their money from tours, concerts, festivals, etc., and on-site merchandise, all the physical stuff. But obviously, COVID came along and it's killed that. And the industry estimates that they're not going to get back together until at least the middle of next year. And when they do, it's going to be lower revenue because of lower people there. So it's a difficult time. But what ROCKI have also done is they've extended things when they're thinking about fan-centric, because they actually compensate the listener as well with ROCKs for listening to sponsored and curated music as well. And even actions like creating a playlist, providing feedback, hosting engagements, all earn ROCK tokens from the platform. So it's more than the traditional, you've got to stream this advertising content for it to be free. So again, from a behavioral economics point of view, I find that really interesting.
Fascinating. Thank you very much for that, Mark. And I love the name ROCKI. Sorry, I couldn't help myself, but yes.
ROCKI 1.
Yes. Rory, could you tell us what it is in the news that you found interesting this week?
Well, this week, I mean, I got too many, Waleed, too many. It's been such a good week, and lots of people sharing precious, interesting information with me. And I've had such a good time. I'll spend a bit longer on the like and a bit less long on the wonder, if that's all right. To begin with, I really loved your podcast on elephants and whales. You're a maverick, Waleed. I looked at it and I was like, that has nothing to do with insurance. And then I thought, I listened to your podcast and it was great, and I realized that I should have trusted you. So that's one thing. But people can read that or listen to that in their own time. But my like of the week is for the contract lovers like me, and the people who see contracts as the world's financial instrument and who want to improve them. An organization I keep going on about on this thread is ICCM, or rather it's just rebranded itself World Commerce and Contracting, or World CC for short. And it just had its annual meeting, and it was a virtual meeting, and my goodness, it was absolutely brilliant. And two segments really stood out for me. First was, and I realize this is going to be a bit awkward, like someone describing a comedy sketch, some sessions I went to, but you didn't. But anyway, the first was the closing segment where the guest was Kenton Cool. And what a name is that? So he's some kind of British loony guy who's climbed Everest dozens of times. And his message was really one for the innovators, like people listening to this open source episode. And it crystallized on a mantra, which was, after darkness comes the light. And I was watching it with my friend Nadia, and we looked at each other, we both got goosebumps. It was just an amazing moment. So that was good. Some sort of light at the end of the tunnel for all entrepreneurs who've been through dark bits. But the segment with even more relevance, I think, to our community was on so-called contract economics, where a friend of mine, Kingsley Martin, demonstrated an algorithm he'd come up with to measure the internal cost generated by a contract. So he can take two random contracts, from the very simple to the very complex, and he can estimate how much it's going to cost you in internal time and in cash, right? And from a financial perspective, and it's a wonderful starting point for creating a business case to improve your templates. And given the sheer number of contracts in the world and the internal costs involved, which World CC, as it's called, says is on average around $7,000 per contract. You apply that with the eye-watering multiplier, and you've got monopoly money going on there, real money, right? And it could have a massive impact on internal cost savings and efficiencies and other segments too. It's not just restricted to one vertical, the insurance vertical. I haven't got time to explain how the algorithm works, but if anybody's interested to know, please raise a hand and I'll happily expand on it and do maybe a little separate podcast on it. In the meantime, big shout out to the incredible World CC team who always get me thinking. I'm really wishing them well on their mission to improve the world's most important financial instrument, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
Excellent. And I just want to add a little note regarding, after the darkness comes the light, is this quote from Martin Luther King, which is, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So yeah, little side note, but I love the sentiment. Dimitar, sorry. Could you tell me what is it in the news that made you wonder?
Well, I came across news about the Philippines, and as we all know, it's not the richest place around, and they have erected new COVID restrictions, especially in some parts of Manila, the capital, where people are really struggling. And what really kind of kept me wondering is that some governments, especially in the developing world, are not doing so wonderful jobs. Well, some governments in the developed world as well, but some governments in the developing world are particularly bad. And I was wondering, what benefit can blockchain and smart contracts and all that thing give to people in such deprived areas, and how difficult would be the application of let's say a smart contract that makes them adjudicate their disputes not in their local courts or through their local administration, but through truly independent entity far away, let's say in London. So it's a wonder.
Yeah, no, it's a very valid wonder. Thank you very much for that. Mark, you seem to be wondering about Dimitar's wonder.
No, I am. I think it's, I mean, the whole COVID thing, once we get past almost the necessity stuff, but necessity just springs in so many ways. So we've seen lots of, okay, what do we help from a health passport and track and trace? And we've seen lots of those, but it's also just the real stuff of how do we take the friction out about getting aid to the people that really need it, so that things, you know, there isn't wastage, it gets there faster, it's not eroded on the way, you know, a bit like our insurance story where 40% goes to inefficiency and commissions.
Exactly.
And the customer pays, but for some of these people, this is real life and death stuff. So I think it's hugely significant.
Indeed, indeed. So what is it in the news that also made you wonder, Mark?
So switching, yeah.
Went from bright red to very gray.
Going grey, and it's not my mood, but it's around surveillance. So I think one of the other things that COVID, I think, is amplified in our concerns over safety is around privacy, and we've been thinking about it in lots of ways. You know, we feel maybe under more surveillance than ever. And again, an example of there's a new camera from a company called IoTex, who they've partnered with a camera manufacturer called Tenvis Tech, offering something called UCam, and it's a security camera that's powered by blockchain. So the idea is, as a user, you can access your camera through a decentralized system. You log in. I'm always slightly suspicious when they say an uncrackable password, but you know, it's always setting yourself up for fail, isn't it? But there was some news today about quantum computing and that working on uncrackable encryption for blockchain. But the idea is the camera or the user's mobile phone handles all the computing, and all the decryption occurs on the devices, so you control your own data. So, and it's classic kind of private key tech. But where did it emerge from? Well, it's to avoid data breaches, and we've seen those haunted by a number of the big companies. So Amazon's Ring was hacked last December, and they used the system to harass people in their homes. So we've seen that in terms of hijacking and some form of basically pay us to go away. And there are similar incidents from Google Nest cameras this year. Some even pretty unsavory, so I won't describe them here. But basically, they're all hacks around what they call walking through the front door. So they just smash brute force through it. So the idea is you've got a more secure camera. But my question is, and my wonder, will we feel safer around this, or will we just see that to support even more surveillance? So I'm really wondering what's going on in that space. And we'll see, you know, blockchain enabled anything soon. And we were at the start of the show. If we stay still too long, maybe we'll be blockchain.
It's a bit, you know, if you remember in the early 2000s, you know, everybody wanted to be called something.com, you know.
Yes.
I was something.com, and now it's something blockchain, you know.
Yes.
So it's, yeah, hopefully, you know, we will drop the .com, we will drop the blockchain. So yes.
Plumbing. Yeah, I agree.
Rory, tell me, what is it in the news that made you wonder?
My wonder of the week is, will anybody answer our survey about insurance documentation technology, please? It's definitely the most ambitious thing we've attempted yet. This is great, you know, I'm going to crack a few others.
I hope that's not a guilty laugh, Dimitar.
We'll blame it all on you, Dimitar.
He can take the survey later. But it's definitely the most ambitious thing we've tried, and it's going to be a really good way, I think, to benchmark our industry so we can all level up and everything can get a bit smoother in the way we handle policies and contracts. When you answer, you as a member of the community, you'll get a copy of the report, and you can you know, compare your firm to others. So I think that's a great deal.
It totally is. And we're going to put a link.
We'll put a link, right? And then the folks on the Insureblocks community can join, and the guys on LinkedIn too can take it and hopefully get hold of a report.
Excellent.
And it goes back to the previous point about, Kingsley's algorithm. I know from personal experience the amount of money that we spend on legal contracts in insurance. So they're going to join up quite nicely, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Well, gentlemen, it was a pleasure. Dimitar, thank you so much for joining us, especially at the last minute.
Laughing.
Set it up. Mark and Rory. Oh God, I need a break. Mark and Rory, thank you very much as usual. And you, the dear audience, thank you for listening in to this webinar. We would love for you to participate in any of our forthcoming episodes. So don't hesitate, to send us a shout if you'd like to join. We absolutely would love to have you. But for now, wishing you all a wonderful rest of the day or evening, and we'll be seeing you next week. Bye, everybody.
Take care now. Bye.
Bye.